Lazy River.
Easygoing, talented, and heroic. These are the words often used to describe Booker T. Gibson. His life's journey has taken him from humble beginnings during the Great Depression to enlisting in our nation's Air Force to his 30-year tenure as the first black teacher in the once segregated Valley Stream South High School. Through it all, Booker Gibson broke racial barriers and became an inspiration to students of many generations. Harlem, New York, 1930. Booker Gibson entered the world at the very beginning of the Depression era in the United States. He was one of three children to parents Theodore and Mary Gibson. Where were you born?
In Harlem Hospital. I think my brother and my sister were born there too. It might have been a slightly different hospital, since that caused me a lot of trouble when I was inducted in the service. And they ask you, where were you born? And everybody says, where, blah, 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 blah. When it got to me, I didn't know where. And they cursed me out because I couldn't tell them exactly where. And I couldn't call home and ask my mother to please. Finally, at that time, the Daily News had a setup. They could look up all of us. They found out exactly which hospital. They didn't have computers in those days.
Following the tragic passing of his father in a sanitation accident, Gibson and his family moved from their little Harlem apartment to the Long Island township of Merrick in 1938, the same year as the Category 3 hurricane known as the Long Island Express. 4,500 homes were lost and 15,000 were severely damaged. The Gibson home, however, survived the storm. It was the beginning of many obstacles that Gibson himself would have to overcome in life. It was during this time in his youth when Gibson began to take a piano while attending Merrick Grammar School and found inspiration from a wide range of performers. Who would you say were like your musical influences when you were growing up?
Mostly piano players, different ones. Like, I don't know whether the person you ever heard of, Frankie Carl. He was a white fellow. He played, we could call it cocktail music now. Since my uncle and aunt would take us to the Apollo a lot, we saw people like Count Basie, so I heard him a lot, and Duke Ellington. So I was influenced by those people. Some influential, larger, older kids told me to get into the assembly, so you'll be in student government. And that's how you stay in student government. You go every year, and eventually you can be the president. And that's what happened to me. I became the president, and I was president of the student body when I was in college too. So once you get into it, nobody else wants a job, I guess.
Gibson's musical talents equaled to many accomplishments in his teenage years. At Memphis High School, he was selected for the American Legion's Boys State program, the Honor Society, and eventually accepted into the State University of New York at Potsdam. But through it all, Gibson was not blind to the segregated society where he was perceived as other.
The kids we knew them all sort of. In Freeport, the colored kids, they had a harder time than we did. In a way, we got a better education. And they went to the Cleveland Avenue School, It's now closed, where Meadowbrook Parkway is. Anybody black had to go there. I know because my father and mother tried to get us there, but my father told them, no, we pay taxes in America, so our kids are going to America. That's what it said. But the Freeport schools were segregated, and the kids were treated, I'd say, badly. And they were suspected of things like stealing things, anything bad. Whereas we didn't have that we got treated pretty well.
Upon graduation from Potsdam, Gibson reached a crossroads. Although he had a desire to teach, he had a far greater desire to see the world.
Most of us didn't know what we wanted after college. We didn't know and I didn't know whether I wanted to be a teacher or what. And the good thing about the Air Force, you travel a lot. I was stationed in Omaha, Nebraska a little while, Kansas for a while, and Roswell, New Mexico. I went up on a bus to Sampson Air Force Base that's up in the Finger Lakes. So that's where they had the Air Force recruits with basic training, 12 weeks there, military life. In a way, that was good for me. Yeah.
Military life also brought a special once-in-a-lifetime moment with another unique individual breaking down racial barriers in his own profession.
I hitchhiked. In the service, you could do that as long as you were in the service and you had your orders on you, that you were legitimate. You could get on any plane, and I got a plane going out somewhere out west, I said. I got off the plane, and I said, which way is St. Louis? And I pointed, and I got out on the highway with my thumbs up. People would do funny things like that. I did that. A white couple. People were like that in uniform, patriotic people. And they took me over to St. Louis, and they let me off. They said, you'll have a hard time getting in a hotel here, but they showed me a hotel. And, and I went in this hotel, a black hotel, and I stayed overnight. I woke up the next day, and I walked in the hall, and there was Jackie and Roy and the whole crowd. That's where they had to stay too. They went downstairs to do whatever they do. But Jackie, went into the main room. He had arranged to meet a group of white high school students. They wanted to discuss this new Supreme Court decision. And so he was out front and telling them all he could about what to expect, and they won't get killed or anything. And when he finished, after about an hour, and they were all given Cokes or something, and they got on buses and went back, and he saw me sitting there, and he was nice. He came over and sat with me, just like that, and we just chatted. And I told him where he came from, and I hoped to be a teacher. I didn't have the nerve to tell him I'm a Yankee fan, but once you're a fan, it's hard to turn off.
After leaving the service in the mid-1950s, Gibson returned home to Memphis to begin a search for music teaching jobs. However, most white districts in Long Island during that time refused to hire teachers of color. It would take luck and persistence before Gibson could land a job.
When I thought, gee, I want to teach school, I was so naive. I thought it would be easy. No, it wasn't easy. And I went to as many schools as possible. Since at that time on Long Island, they were building schools as fast as they could, since people were moving out from the city, especially Brooklyn. In Valley Stream, for instance, they had one high school, then they had to build a North Valley Stream high school, a South Valley, same all over. But no place would seriously interview me. And I was too naive to realize that's what I was up against. Even my home school, where I was more or less born and raised here in America. They had new schools here, but no. And just through luck, uh, three of the best teachers on Long Island heard about me, and they took me to Valley Stream. Then I started October 1956 in Valley Stream, and it started all right, but I didn't have a curriculum really to help me get started. They said, well, go in there, you can entertain the kids. Like they wanted me to play the piano and smile and all that. You can't do that with kids. You can't. Seventh grade, eighth grade kids, and junior high, they're a rough bunch. But after a while, I got to know them and know how to sort of approach them a little better.
I think he was younger than a lot of the other teachers and just an upbeat, positive person, and just made the class interesting.
When I was desperate looking for some way, since at first I didn't have any curriculum that I could say that was usable because the kids didn't care for it. But that's when I decided, hey, we're right here in New York. We're going to make our work based on New York City. New York City, all of these shows open. The West Side Story open. All these shows, one after another. Let's check them out. Philadelphia orchestra's in town. Chicago orchestra's in town. Either if they couldn't get the reviews, I would cut them out and hang them up in my room, and they would be on my weekly quiz. So they got accustomed to that. They got accustomed to some famous names of musicians and shows, whether they didn't make it or not.
I remember dragging my mother to Madame Butterfly, and we had to stand. We couldn't even get tickets, but I insisted. Mr. Gibson said we had to go to an opera. So that's what we did, and I think I saw Madame Butterfly, and I saw one other opera in my life, and that was it, because I really don't like opera. But because Mr. Gibson said we had to go to opera, that's what we did.
Since the school didn't have much equipment, that's putting it mildly, except a phonograph and a piano, I started bringing in my own records, and I bought a better sound system. Every year I did a lot of work with a school play. Since I played piano, and the dramatic teacher, he directed the kids. And since you ever think of a play, there's a lot of countless rehearsals, night after night, and going over introductions with kids and all that, and putting up with tantrums and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, the class of '65, they proposed a scholarship for the director, Benny Tampio. And the other kids in that class said, how about one for Mr. Gibson? So there's a 10-year scholarship there for me. Yeah, and it still boggles my mind to walk in that school and see there a plaque on the wall opposite the principal's office. Yeah, but it's there.
Gibson would spend the next 30 years of his life teaching at Valley Stream South. As time went on, the walls of segregation were broken down, just as Gibson's teaching accomplishments became recognized throughout the Long Island community. After he retired from teaching in 1986, Gibson made piano playing his profession as he played regularly at the Irish Coffee Pub in East Islip.
I found I liked working alone than the piano player, besides making more money, but a piano player knows more tunes than a band does. Yeah, playing piano, you know hundreds and hundreds of songs, really. So it's when somebody requests a song, or if you think by looking at them what they like that, really. And that's what I did for about the last 30 years of my life, playing music like. And also, I miss it because I had to stop playing these piano gigs in May because I was losing it. I was sleepy from these damn pills, and when we got to this Christmas, I missed the crowd there, and I missed the money. Really, that's a lot of money. I didn't realize it really. Just 2 nights a week, but you miss it, really. I got a lot of gifts from my kids. And my wife, she's so good to me. Oh, God. And I can talk about her all the time.
Today, Gibson continues to stay in touch with his former students. He attends regular meetings for the Valley Stream South High School Alumni Association. One of his very first students, Emily Schreiber, is the president of the Alumni Association.
He's the most loved former teacher. He comes to reunions, and people from South, alumni, teachers, and students went to see him at the Irish Coffee Pub. They're happy to see him at reunions. I remember that we enjoyed his class. His big smile endeared him to us.
You cried at Man and Butterfly?
Why cry easily?
I still watch Pretty Woman where
Yes.
she watches and she cries, and I say,
I cried
how come I
everything.
didn't cry at that opera?
But
But that Pretty Woman scene always reminds me of you
Right.
and me dragging my mom to Madame Butterfly.
An American lieutenant. He's stationed briefly in Japan, and he's forms a romance quote with a young, cute girl. And he marries her by Japanese standards.
Right.
He considers it a real marriage. He doesn't realize he's not married to her. He goes back to America and he leaves her with a child. He
That's
goes
like Miss
back to
Saigon
America,
is the look on
and
that.
he-
Yeah.
3 years later, he comes back, and she has this faith in him coming back to her. And she has some bad talk that she must have been fooling around. We can fix you up with somebody better. But she sings this incredible song, One Fine Day. In here, Cannon Chuck, yeah.
Boonbell D.
Yeah.
I remember that.
One that I always remember learning about is La Boheme.
Yes.
The music is beautiful.
La Boheme, same
I would
idea.
love to see that.
It's based on true stories, and you can
Rio
relate to the
Balbino
people.
Caro.
Oh.
Karen's gonna sing now.
Boonbell D. The Flater Mouse.
Yeah,
Leader Mouse.
it's, even the boys get quiet.
As a musician, a veteran, and a teacher, Booker Gibson's journey is a testament to the importance of education in the arts and universal equality. However, in this stage of his life, he continues to inspire the next generation of musicians to come.
A music instrument now is a different thing. In my time, you still had to learn how to play piano correctly. And then you could go into other things. Learn the most tunes you can and go from there. Learn as many songs as you can. However you learn them, learn as many songs as possible.